They said, "Be better, rise above, fix yourself." But no one mentioned the weight of becoming, the way it drags you into corners of yourself you've long ignored. This isn't a victory speech. This is a mirror held to the man who knows the truth. Becoming better doesn't erase the suffering. It forces you to face it. This audiobook is for those who are done hiding, done running, done lying to themselves, for those ready to walk straight through it. So let's begin the transformative journey. You wake up and the first thing you feel is the weight. Not physical, not visible, but there. It sits on your chest before your feet hit the floor. It whispers in the silence before the day begins. It tells you that you're not enough, that you should be further along, that you're falling behind. And somewhere along the way, you believed it. You started believing that who you are right now isn't acceptable, that you need to be fixed, improved, optimized, that the man you are today is just a rough draft of the man you're supposed to become. So you started chasing it, becoming better. You read the books, you listened to the podcasts, you followed the routines, you wrote the goals, you pushed yourself harder, you cut the bad habits, you built the good ones. You did everything they told you to do. And still the weight remains, because no one told you the truth. No one told you that the idea of becoming better isn't freedom. It's another cage, a different kind of prison, one where you're both the inmate and the warden. You police yourself, you judge yourself, you punish yourself for not measuring up to a version of yourself that doesn't even exist yet. And the more you chase it, the heavier it gets. This is the hidden pain behind the idea of becoming better, the part they don't talk about in the videos, the part they don't mention in the motivational speeches. It's the pain of never being enough. Not because you're lazy, not because you're weak, but because the goalpost keeps moving, because every time you reach one level, there's another one waiting, another standard, another expectation, another version of yourself you're supposed to become, and you're tired. Not tired of trying, tired of the wait, tired of waking up and feeling like you're already behind, tired of looking in the mirror and seeing a man who's still not good enough, tired of carrying the burden of who you're supposed to be while trying to survive as who you are. But here's the thing they don't tell you. The weight doesn't come from failing to become better. It comes from believing you're broken in the first place. It comes from buying into the lie that you need to be fixed, that you need to be more, that you need to become someone else before you're allowed to breathe. And that lie will destroy you. Not all at once, slowly, quietly, one expectation at a time. It will make you feel like you're never doing enough, never moving fast enough, never changing fast enough. It will turn your life into a performance, a constant audition for a role you'll never land. Because the truth is, you were never auditioning. You were just living. And somewhere along the way, living stopped being enough. So let's be clear about something. This audiobook isn't here to tell you how to become better. It's not here to give you another list, another system, another formula to follow. It's here to show you the cost of believing that who you are right now isn't worthy of rest, the cost of treating yourself like a project instead of a person, the cost of carrying the weight of expectation until it crushes you. And it's here to ask you a question. What if you stopped? What if you stopped trying to become better and started asking yourself why you believe you're not good enough in the first place? What if the problem isn't that you're not improving fast enough, but that you've been measuring yourself against a standard that was never meant for you? What if the weight you're carrying isn't yours to carry at all? This chapter isn't about rejecting growth. It's not about giving up. It's about understanding where the weight comes from. Because once you see it, you can decide whether or not you want to keep carrying it. The origins of the weight. You didn't wake up one day and decide to feel insufficient. Someone taught you. Maybe it was your father. Maybe it was your mother. Maybe it was a teacher, a coach, a friend, a partner. Maybe it was your father. Maybe it was your mother. Maybe it was a teacher, a coach, a friend, a partner. Maybe it was the world itself, the culture, the media, the endless parade of people who seemed to have it all figured out. Somewhere along the way, you learned that who you are isn't enough. You learned that love is conditional, that respect is earned, that your value is tied to your performance. You learned that you have to prove yourself, that you have to earn your place, that you have to become something more before you're allowed to stop running. And once you learned it, you couldn't unlearn it. It became the lens through which you see everything. Every mistake became evidence. Every failure became proof. Every moment of weakness became a confirmation that you're not enough, that you need to be better, that you need to keep climbing. And the climb never ends, because the weight isn't about the goal. It's about the belief. The belief that you're not worthy as you are, that you're not complete, that you're not finished. And as long as you believe that, you'll keep carrying the weight. No matter how much you achieve, no matter how much you improve, no matter how much you change, the weight will stay. Because it was never about what you did, it was always about what you believe. The cost of the climb. Here's what they don't tell you about becoming better. It cost you. It cost you time. It cost you energy. It cost you peace. But more than that, it cost you presence. Because when you're always chasing the next version of yourself, you're never here. You're never in this moment. You're never with this version of yourself. You're always ahead, always focused on who you need to become, always measuring the gap between who you are and who you're supposed to be. And that gap becomes your entire life. You stop experiencing. You start performing. You stop living. You see how it is. Start optimizing. Every moment becomes a test. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to prove something. Every day becomes a chance to get closer to the man you're supposed to become. And in the process, you lose the man you are. You lose the ability to rest, to be, to exist without purpose or progress. You lose the ability to sit in silence and feel okay, to wake up and not immediately start the mental checklist of what you need to do to be better. You lose yourself in the pursuit of a version of yourself that will never be satisfied. Because the truth is, the man you're trying to become will always want more. He'll always see the next level, the next standard, the next version of himself he needs to chase. And if you keep following him, you'll never stop running. The permission you've been waiting for, so here it is. You don't need to become better. Not right now, not today, not in this moment. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to breathe. You're allowed to exist as the man you are right now. Flawed, incomplete, imperfect, and still be worthy of rest. You don't need to earn it. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to climb one more level before you're allowed to exhale. You're allowed to be here, as you are, right now. And that doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It doesn't mean you give up on yourself. It means you stop treating yourself like you're broken. It means you stop believing that who you are today is just a rough draft, a placeholder, a version that needs to be discarded as soon as possible. It means you stop carrying the weight of expectation and start asking yourself what you actually want, not what you should want, not what you're supposed to want, but what you, this man right here, right now, actually needs, and maybe what you need isn't another goal, another system, another standard to meet, and maybe what you need is to put the weight down. Even if it's just for a moment. Even if it's just long enough to remember what it feels like to breathe without the burden of becoming someone else. There's a moment that comes before everything changes. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It's the moment when you're finally alone, when the distractions fade, when the noise stops, when there's nothing left to do but sit with yourself. And in that moment, you hear it. The silence. Not the absence of sound, the presence of truth. The truth you've been running from, the truth you've been drowning out with work, with routine, with movement, with anything that keeps you from standing still, because standing still means facing it, and facing it means feeling it. The pain, the doubt, the fear, the weight of everything you've been avoiding. This is the silence before the storm, the moment when you realize that everything you've been doing, every goal, every routine, every distraction, has been a way to avoid being here, in this moment, with this truth. And now, there's nowhere left to run. Why we run from silence. Silence is terrifying. Not because it's empty, because it's full. Full of the questions you don't want to answer, full of the feelings you don't want to feel, full of the truths you don't want to face. In the silence, you can't lie to yourself. You can't pretend you're okay when you're not. You can't pretend you're on the right path when you're not. You can't pretend you're becoming better when all you're really doing is becoming busier. The silence shows you the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be, the gap between what you want and what you're doing, the gap between the life you're living and the life you thought you'd have by now. And that gap is unbearable. So you fill the silence. You fill it with work, with content, with plans, with goals, with anything that keeps you moving, anything that keeps you distracted, anything that keeps you from sitting still long enough to hear what the silence is trying to say, because you know what it's trying to say. It's trying to tell you that you're not okay, that you've been lying to yourself, that you've been running, that you've been avoiding the one thing you need to face, yourself. When you finally stop running and sit in the silence, here's what you hear. You hear the pain you've been carrying, the pain of loss, the pain of failure, the pain of disappointment, the pain of not being who you thought you'd be, the pain of not having what you thought you'd have. You hear the fear you've been avoiding, the fear that you're not good enough, that you never will be, that you've wasted time, that you've made the wrong choices, that you're too far behind to ever catch up. You hear the truth you've been denying, the truth that you're tired, that you're lost, that you don't know what you're doing, that you're not as strong as you pretend to be. And it hurts. It hurts because you've been holding it all in. You've been carrying it all alone. You've been pretending that if you just keep moving, if you just keep climbing, if you just keep becoming better, eventually the pain will go away. But it doesn't. It just gets heavier. Because pain that's avoided doesn't disappear. It accumulates. It compounds. It builds until the weight of it is so heavy that you can't run anymore. And that's when the silence comes. Not to break you, to wake you. Here's what most men don't understand about silence. It's not the problem. It's the warning. The silence is telling you that there's a storm brewing beneath the surface, a storm you've been ignoring, a storm that's been growing stronger the longer you've avoided it. And if you keep running, that storm will eventually catch you. It will catch you in a moment when you're not ready, when you're not prepared, when you're too tired to fight it. It will catch you in the form of a breakdown, a collapse, a moment when everything you've been holding together finally falls apart. But here's the thing. You can face the storm on your terms. You can sit in the silence and let the storm come now, in this moment, when you're aware of it, when you're ready for it, when you can meet it head on, instead of being ambushed by it. And yes, it will hurt. But it will hurt less than pretending, less than running, less than waiting for the storm to hit when you're not looking. Sitting with what hurts. So how do you sit with the silence? You stop moving. You stop planning. You stop optimizing. You stop distracting yourself with the next goal, the next task, the next version of yourself you're trying to become. You sit, and you let the silence speak. You let the pain come. You let the fear rise. You let the doubt surface. And instead of running from it, you stay. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to solve it. You don't have to make it go away. You just have to be with it. Because that's what you've been avoiding, not the pain itself, the act of being with it. You've been so busy trying to outrun it, outsmart it, outimprove it, that you've never just sat with it long enough to see what it actually is. And what it is, most of the time, is this: a part of you that's been ignored, a part of you that's been silenced, a part of you that's been buried under the weight of expectation and performance and becoming better, a part of you that just wants to be seen, not fixed, not improved, not transformed, just seen. The power of stillness. Here's what happens when you stop running and sit in the silence. You realize that the storm isn't as big as you thought. It's loud. It's intense. It's uncomfortable. But it's not infinite. It's not insurmountable. It's not the end. It's just a feeling. A feeling that's been waiting for you to acknowledge it. A feeling that's been demanding your attention. A feeling that's been growing louder the more you've ignored it. And once you sit with it, once you let it be there, without fighting it, without fixing it, it starts to settle. Not because you've solved it, because you've witnessed it. Because that's what pain needs most. Not a solution, a witness. Someone who's willing to sit with it and say, I see you, I feel you. I'm not going anywhere. And when you do that, when you become that witness for yourself, the silence stops being terrifying. It becomes sacred. It becomes the place where you meet yourself, where you strip away the performance and the pretending and the constant pursuit of better, where you stop being the man you're supposed to be and start being the man you are. Flawed, tired, uncertain, real. And in that realness, you find something you've been searching for all along. Peace. Not the peace of having it all figured out. Not the peace of being perfect. Not the peace of finally becoming better. The peace of being present. The peace of being here, in this moment, with yourself, exactly as you are. The storm is the invitation. Here's the truth about the silence before the storm. The storm isn't punishment, it's an invitation. An invitation to stop running, to stop pretending, to stop carrying the weight of who you're supposed to be. An invitation to sit with the man you are, to acknowledge the pain you've been avoiding, to face the fear you've been denying. An invitation to let the storm come and to realize that you can survive it. Not by fighting it, not by outrunning it, but by standing still and letting it wash over you. Because the storm isn't here to destroy you. It's here to cleanse you, to strip away the layers of pretending, to wash away the expectations, to reveal what's underneath. And what's underneath is stronger than you think. It's the part of you that's been carrying this weight all along. The part of you that's been surviving, even when it felt like you were drowning. The part of you that is still here, still breathing, still standing. That part doesn't need to become better. It just needs to be seen. And the silence, the storm, is how you see it. So here's where you stand. You can keep running. You can keep filling the silence with noise. You can keep avoiding the storm. And maybe you'll outrun it for a while. Maybe you'll keep yourself distracted long enough to forget it's there. But it will catch you eventually. Or you can stop. You can sit in the silence. You can let the storm come. You can face the pain, the fear, the truth you've been avoiding. And you can realize that the storm isn't the end. It's the beginning. The beginning of something real, something honest, something that doesn't require you to pretend. The beginning of a life where you're not constantly running from yourself, where you're not constantly trying to become someone else, where you're just here, present, alive. And that's not weakness. That's the hardest thing a man can do. To stop running, to sit with the pain, to face the storm, and to come out the other side, not better, not fixed, not perfect, but real. Let me tell you about the man you learn to hate. He's the one who feels too much, who doubts, who hesitates, who doesn't have all the answers. He's the one who cries when he's alone, who feels weak when the weight gets too heavy, who wants to quit when the climb gets too steep. He's the one you were told to bury, to silence, to ignore, to erase. Because that man isn't strong, he isn't stoic, he isn't disciplined, he isn't the man you're supposed to be. So you learned to hate him. And every time he surfaced, every time you felt doubt, fear, pain, exhaustion, you pushed him down. You told yourself he was weak, that he was the problem, that if you could just eliminate him, control him, override him, then you'd finally become the man you're supposed to be. But here's what they didn't tell you. That man isn't your enemy. He's you, and hating him is killing you. The blueprint you were given. From the moment you were old enough to understand, they gave you a blueprint. This is what a man is. This is what a man does. This is how a man behaves. A man is strong. A man doesn't cry. A man doesn't complain. A man doesn't show weakness. A man doesn't ask for help. A man doesn't fail. A man provides. A man protects. A man performs. A man endures. And if you don't fit that blueprint, if you feel things the blueprint says you shouldn't feel, if you need things the blueprint says you shouldn't need, then you're not a man. You're something less, something broken, something that needs to be fixed. So you tried to fix it. You tried to mold yourself into the blueprint. You tried to cut off the parts that didn't fit. You tried to become the man they said you should be. And every time you failed, every time you felt doubt, fear, sadness, exhaustion, you told yourself it was your fault. You told yourself you weren't strong enough. You weren't disciplined enough. You weren't man enough. You told yourself that the problem was you. But it wasn't. The problem was the blueprint. The blueprint was never yours. Here's the truth they don't want you to know. The blueprint wasn't designed for you. It was designed to control you. It was designed to turn you into a tool, a worker, a soldier, a provider, a performer. It was designed to suppress the parts of you that make you human, the parts that feel, doubt, question, need, so that you could be useful. And the cost of that blueprint? Your humanity, your ability to feel, to connect, to be vulnerable, to be real, your ability to be more than just functional, more than just strong, more than just a man who can carry the weight without collapsing. The blueprint didn't care about you. It cared about what you could do. And when you couldn't do it anymore, when the weight got too heavy, when the exhaustion set in, when the doubt crept in, the blueprint told you that you were the problem, that you weren't strong enough, that you needed to try harder, that you needed to become better. But the truth is, you were never the problem. The blueprint was. The war within, so you went to war with yourself. You went to war with the parts of you that didn't fit the blueprint, the parts that felt weak, the parts that wanted to rest, the parts that needed connection, vulnerability, softness. You told those parts they weren't allowed to exist. You told them they were the enemy, that they were holding you back, that they were keeping you from becoming the man you're supposed to be. And every time they surfaced, you fought them. You drowned them in work. You buried them in discipline. You silenced them with distraction. You crushed them with willpower. And you thought that was strength. You thought that by controlling those parts, by suppressing them, by refusing to let them breathe, you were becoming stronger, but you weren't. You were fracturing. Oh, that you could produce, so that you could serve, so that you could endure without breaking down. Because you can't go to war with yourself and win. You can only exhaust yourself. You can only split yourself into pieces, one part trying to be the blueprint, one part desperate to be real, until you don't know which one is you anymore. And that's where you are now, exhausted, fractured, at war with the man you are because he doesn't match the man you're supposed to be. And the war is killing you. What you lost in the war. Here's what you sacrificed in the war with yourself. You lost your ability to feel. Because every time a feeling came up that didn't fit the blueprint, sadness, fear, doubt, loneliness, you pushed it down. You told yourself it wasn't real. that it didn't matter, that it was weakness. And eventually, you stop feeling anything at all. Not just the pain, everything. The joy, the connection, the presence, the aliveness. You became numb, functional, robotic. You lost your ability to connect. Because connection requires vulnerability. And vulnerability requires letting the parts of you that don't fit the blueprint be seen. So you built walls. You kept people at a distance. You showed them the version of yourself that fit the blueprint. The strong one, the capable one, the one who doesn't need anything, and you hid the rest. And in doing that, you lost the ability to be known, not just by others, by yourself. Because you can't be known if you're always hiding. You can't be loved if you're always performing. You can't be real if you're always pretending. You lost your ability to rest. Because rest is for men who are allowed to be human, men who are allowed to be tired, men who are allowed to say, I need a break. But you're not allowed to be that man. So you kept going. You kept pushing. You kept climbing. And now you're exhausted, not just tired, depleted, running on fumes, running on willpower, running on the fumes of willpower, and you have nothing left. The man beneath the blueprint. But here's what you need to understand. Beneath the blueprint, there's a man, a real man. Not the man you're supposed to be, the man you are. He's been there all along, buried, silenced, ignored. He's the one who feels the pain you won't acknowledge, who carries the doubt you won't admit, who holds the exhaustion you won't rest from. He's the one who wants to cry, but isn't allowed, who wants to quit, but isn't allowed, who wants to ask for help, but isn't allowed. He's the one you've been at war with. And he's tired. Tired of being hated. Tired of being silenced. Tired of being told he's not good enough. Tired of being the enemy in a war he didn't start. But here's the thing. That man isn't your enemy. He never was. He's the most honest part of you, the most human part of you, the part that refuses to be molded by a blueprint that was never designed for your humanity. And hating him, silencing him, suppressing him, trying to erase him, is the reason you're fractured. Because you can't become whole by cutting yourself in half. You can't become strong by going to war with yourself. You can only become whole by stopping the war, by laying down the weapons, by calling a truce, by acknowledging that the man beneath the blueprint isn't the problem. The blueprint is the truce. So here's what the truce looks like. You stop hating the man who feels. You stop calling him weak. You stop telling him he's the problem. You stop trying to erase him. Instead, you acknowledge him. You listen to him. You let him speak. And when he says, I'm tired, you don't tell him to push harder. You let him rest. When he says, I'm scared, you don't tell him to be brave. You let him be scared. When he says, I don't know what I'm doing, you don't tell him to figure it out. You let him not know. Because that's not weakness. That's honesty. And honesty is the foundation of strength. Not the strength that comes from suppressing your humanity. The strength that comes from acknowledging it. The strength that comes from being real, from being whole, from being both the man who carries the weight and the man who feels the weight. That's the truce. Not giving up, not quitting, not abandoning the climb. Just stop fighting yourself along the way. The man you could be. Here's what happens when you stop hating the man beneath the blueprint. You stop fracturing. You stop splitting yourself into pieces. You stop performing a version of yourself that doesn't exist. And you start becoming whole. Not better. Whole. A man who can be strong and vulnerable. Who can carry the weight and ask for help. Who can climb the mountain and rest when he needs to. A man who doesn't need to fit a blueprint because he's created his own. A blueprint built on his truth, his values, his humanity. A blueprint that allows him to be real. And that man, that whole, real, unfractured man, is stronger than the blueprint ever was. Because he's not at war with himself. He's not exhausting himself trying to be someone he's not. He's not performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. He's just being. And being is harder and more powerful than becoming ever was. The permission to be human. So here's what you need to hear. You're allowed to be human. You're allowed to feel, to doubt, to be tired, to not have all the answers. You're allowed to be the man beneath the blueprint. And that doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you real. And real is what you've been avoiding all along. Because real doesn't fit the performance. Real doesn't fit the image. Real doesn't fit the man you're supposed to be. But real is the only thing that will set you free. Not from the climb, from the war. The war with yourself. The war that's been exhausting you. The war that's been fracturing you. The war that's been keeping you from ever feeling whole. So stop fighting. Stop hating the man you were taught to hate. And start becoming the man you actually are. There's a version of strength you were taught. It's the version where you carry everything alone, where you don't ask for help, where you don't show weakness, where you don't need anyone. The version where you're the rock, the provider, the one who holds it together when everything else falls apart. The version where your strength is measured by how much weight you can carry without breaking. And you believed it. You believed that to be strong you had to be alone, that to be a man you had to be self-sufficient, that needing others was weakness, that asking for help was failure. So you climbed alone. You carried the weight alone. You faced the storms alone. You fought the battles alone. And you thought that was strength. But it wasn't. It was isolation. And isolation is killing you. Why we climb alone? You didn't choose isolation. You were taught it. You were taught that men don't need help, that men don't lean on others, that men don't show vulnerability. You were taught that needing someone is dependency, that relying on someone is weakness, that opening up to someone is risk. So you learned to close off. You learned to keep people at a distance, to handle everything yourself, to solve your own problems, to carry your own weight. You learned that the only person you can count on is yourself. And in some ways, that's true. But in most ways, it's a lie. Because humans weren't designed to climb alone. We weren't designed to carry the weight by ourselves. We weren't designed to survive in isolation. We were designed for connection, for support, for community. But you were taught to ignore that, to override it, to see it as weakness. So you climbed alone. And every step you took, the weight got heavier. The climb got steeper. The exhaustion set in deeper. Because you weren't just carrying your own weight, you were carrying the weight of isolation itself. The weight of pretending you're okay when you're not. The weight of hiding your pain. The weight of suppressing your need for connection. And that weight is crushing you, the illusion of self-sufficiency. Here's what they don't tell you about self-sufficiency. It's not strength. It's survival mode. It's what happens when you believe that the world is unsafe, that people can't be trusted, that the only way to protect yourself is to need nothing from anyone. It's what happens when you've been hurt, abandoned, or let down so many times that you decide it's easier to do it alone. And maybe, at one point, that was true. Maybe at one point, doing it alone was the only option, the only way to survive. But survival isn't living. Survival is getting through the day. Living is being present in the day. Survival is carrying the weight. Living is sharing the weight. Survival is closing off. Living is opening up. And you've been in survival mode for so long that you've forgotten what living feels like. You've forgotten what it feels like to be seen, to be known, to be supported. You've forgotten what it feels like to share the weight instead of carrying it alone. And the longer you stay in survival mode, the harder it is to leave. Because survival mode feels safe. It feels controlled. It feels like you're protecting yourself. But you're not protecting yourself. You're imprisoning yourself. There's a narrative you've been sold. The lone wolf, the self-made man, the one who doesn't need anyone. It's romanticized. It's glorified. It's held up as the ultimate form of masculinity. But here's what they don't tell you. Lone wolves die alone. In nature, wolves that separate from the pack don't survive. They don't thrive in isolation. They struggle. They weaken. They become vulnerable. Because wolves aren't designed to be alone. They're designed to be part of a pack. And so are you. You weren't designed to carry everything alone. You weren't designed to face every storm by yourself. You weren't designed to climb the mountain without support. You were designed for connection, for community, for belonging. For community, for belonging. But you've been taught to reject that, to see it as weakness, to believe that real strength is doing it alone, and that lie is destroying you. Because every day you spend believing that lie is another day you spend isolated, disconnected, alone. Another day you spend carrying weight that was never meant to be carried alone. Another day you spend pretending you're okay when you're not. Another day you spend dying slowly in a prison of your own making, the weight of being the rock. You've been the rock for so long, the one everyone leans on, the one who holds it together, the one who doesn't break. Your family leans on you, your partner leans on you, your friends lean on you, and you let them. Because that's what you're supposed to do. That's what a man does. He carries, he provides, he protects. He's the rock. But here's what no one asks. Who do you lean on? When the weight gets too heavy, who carries you? When you're tired, who gives you rest? When you're struggling, who holds you together? The answer, most of the time, is no one. Because you've convinced everyone that you don't need it, that you're fine, that you can handle it. You've convinced them so well that they believe it. And maybe you believe it too. But belief doesn't make it true. The truth is, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, you're struggling. The truth is, you need support just as much as anyone else. But you won't ask for it. You won't reach for it. You won't admit it. Because admitting it feels like failure, like weakness, like letting everyone down. So you keep being the rock, and the rock keeps cracking. The moment the rock breaks. Here's what happens when you carry everything alone for too long. You break. Not all at once. Not in a way that's visible. Not in a way that anyone notices. You break quietly, internally, in ways that only you can see. You break in the form of exhaustion so deep that you can't remember what it feels like to be rested. You break in the form of numbness so complete that you can't remember what it feels like to feel anything. You break in the form of isolation so total that you can't remember what it feels like to be connected. You break in the silence, in the moments when you're alone and there's no one to perform for. When the mask comes off and all that's left is the exhaustion. And in those moments, you realize something. You can't do this anymore. You can't keep carrying the weight alone. You can't keep being the rock. You can't keep pretending you're okay. But you don't know how to stop. Because stopping feels like quitting, like failing, like letting everyone down. So you keep going, even though you're broken, even though you're empty, even though there's nothing left. And that's when the real damage happens. Because you're not just breaking, you're breaking down. So here's what you need to hear. You're allowed to lean. You're allowed to need support. You're allowed to ask for help. You're allowed to admit that you can't do it alone. And that doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a man. It doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human. And being human requires connection. It requires vulnerability. It requires letting people in. Not everyone. Not all at once. But someone. Someone who can see the weight you're carrying. Someone who can offer to share it. Someone who can remind you that you don't have to climb alone. And finding that person, or those people, requires something you've been avoiding. It requires you to drop the mask, to lower the walls, to stop pretending you're okay when you're not. It requires you to be honest, not just with them, with yourself. To admit that you're tired, that you're struggling, that you need something. And that admission isn't the end of your strength, it's the beginning of it. Because real strength doesn't come from isolation. It comes from connection, from knowing that you don't have to carry everything alone, that you don't have to be the rock. There's a grief that comes with becoming. Not the grief of loss, the grief of transformation. The grief of realizing that to become someone new, you had to leave parts of yourself behind. Parts that didn't fit, parts that weren't strong enough, parts that couldn't make the climb. And no one warned you about this. No one told you that becoming better would require you to say goodbye to who you were. No one told you that growth would feel like death. That every step forward would mean leaving something behind. That every version of yourself you outgrew would haunt you. That every choice you made to climb higher would cost you something you can't get back. And now you're here, standing on the mountain, looking back at all the pieces of yourself you left scattered along the way. And you feel it, the grief. Not for what you lost, for who you lost. The man you used to be, the man who didn't make it to the top, the man who died so this version of you could live. And no one's talking about it. They're talking about the victory, the transformation, the becoming. But they're not talking about the cost of leaving yourself behind. What you left behind. Let's be honest about what you left behind on the climb. You left behind the version of yourself who believed things could be easy. The version who thought life would work out, who thought dreams would come true, who thought effort would be enough. That version of you died when reality hit, when the dreams didn't come true, when the effort wasn't enough. And you had to become someone else, someone harder, someone more realistic, someone who doesn't expect things to be easy. You left behind the version of yourself who trusted easily, the version who believed in people, who gave second chances, who saw the good in everyone. That version of you died when you got burned, when people let you down, when trust became a liability instead of a gift. And you had to become someone else, someone more guarded, someone more careful, someone who doesn't trust until it's earned. You left behind the version of yourself who felt everything, the version who cried at movies, who felt deeply, who wore his heart on his sleeve. That version of you died when feeling became too painful, when emotions became a weakness, when being vulnerable meant getting hurt. And you had to become someone else, someone more controlled, someone more numb, someone who doesn't feel as much because feeling hurts too much. You left behind the version of yourself who had time. Time for hobbies, time for fun, time for rest, time for the things that made life feel alive. That version of you died when the grind started, when the responsibilities piled up, when survival became more important than living. And you had to become someone else, someone more disciplined, someone more focused, someone who doesn't have time for anything that doesn't move him forward. You left behind the version of yourself who believed he was enough. That version of you died when you started believing the lie, when you started measuring your worth by your performance, when you started believing that who you are isn't enough. And you had to become someone else, someone who's always climbing, someone who's always proving, someone who's always becoming. And now you look back at all those versions of yourself, all those pieces you left behind, and you feel the grief. Because you didn't want to leave them behind. You had to. The death no one mourns. Here's what makes this grief so hard. No one mourns the man you used to be. They celebrate the man you've become. They praise your transformation. They admire your strength. But they don't see the cost. They don't see the parts of you that died. They don't see the innocence you lost. They don't see the softness you bury. They don't see the grief. Because the grief isn't visible. It's not dramatic. It's not something you can point to and say, "This is what I lost." It's subtle. It's quiet. It's the feeling that hits you when you're alone, when you look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. It's the feeling that you've become someone you're proud of, but someone you're not sure you even know anymore. It's the feeling that you won the climb but lost yourself along the way, and no one's talking about it, because talking about it feels like weakness, like regret, like you're not grateful for how far you've come. But it's not weakness, it's grief. And grief doesn't mean you regret the climb. It means you're honest about what it cost. The versions you mourn. Let me tell you about the versions of yourself you mourn most. You mourn the version who believed life would be fair, the version who thought hard work would pay off, who thought good people would be rewarded, who thought doing the right thing would lead to good things. That version died when life proved otherwise, when hard work wasn't enough, when good people got hurt, when doing the right thing led to nothing, and you became someone who doesn't expect fairness, who doesn't expect reward, who doesn't expect life to make sense. But you miss the version who believed, who had hope, who thought the world was just. You mourn the version who felt safe, the version who didn't worry constantly, who didn't scan every room for threats, who didn't assume the worst. That version died when something broke your sense of safety, when you realized the world isn't safe, when you learned that bad things can happen no matter how careful you are, and you became someone who's always on guard, who's always prepared, who's always waiting for the next storm. But you miss the version who felt at ease, who could relax, who didn't carry the weight of vigilance. You mourn the version who loved freely, the version who gave his heart without hesitation, who believed in love, who thought it would last. That version died when love ended, when the heart got broken, when giving everything wasn't enough. And you became someone who loves carefully, who guards his heart, who doesn't give everything because giving everything means losing everything. But you miss the version who believed in forever, who felt deeply, who loved without fear. You mourn the version who had dreams, big dreams, impossible dreams, dreams that felt real. That version died when reality set in, when the dreams didn't come true, when life became about survival instead of possibility. And you became someone who's practical, who's realistic, who doesn't dream as big because dreaming big leads to disappointment. But you miss the version who believed anything was possible, who felt alive with possibility, who dared to want more. The price of strength. Here's the hardest truth about becoming. The strength you built came at a cost. The strength to keep going came from learning that stopping means failing. The strength to be independent came from learning that needing people means getting hurt. The strength to control your emotions came from learning that feeling means being vulnerable. The strength to keep climbing came from learning that resting means falling behind. Every strength you built required you to kill a part of yourself, the part that wanted to stop, the part that wanted to need, the part that wanted to feel, the part that wanted to rest. And now you're strong, but you're also hollow. Because the strengths you built aren't just walls that protect you, they're prisons that isolate you. The strength that keeps you moving keeps you from resting. The strength that keeps you independent keeps you from connecting. The strength that keeps you controlled keeps you from feeling. The strength that keeps you climbing keeps you from living. And you look at the man you've become, the strong, blind, independent man, and you realize something. He's capable, he's resilient, he's powerful. But he's not happy, because happiness requires the parts of you that you left behind. You've been climbing towards something your whole life. A goal, a milestone, a version of yourself. You told yourself, when I get there, everything will be different. When I have the money, when I have the body, when I have the career, when I have the relationship, when I have the life I'm supposed to have. When I arrive, I'll finally feel like I made it. I'll finally feel successful, accomplished, worthy, at peace. I'll finally feel like enough. So you climbed, you worked, you sacrificed, you pushed, you endured. You did everything you were supposed to do. You hit the milestones. You checked the boxes. You became the man you said you'd become. And then you arrived. And it felt empty. Not bad, not disappointing, just empty. Because the feeling you were chasing, the feeling of arrival, of completion, of finally being enough, never came. You reached the top and realized something no one warned you about. There is no top. There's just another climb. The lie of, when I... Let's talk about the lie you've been living. The when I whom lie. When I get the promotion, I'll feel successful. When I hit my goal weight, I'll feel confident. When I find the right relationship, I'll feel complete. When I make enough money, I'll feel secure. When I... You've been living in the future, in the moment when everything finally comes together, when you finally become the man you're supposed to be. And you believed that moment would change everything, that it would feel like winning, like crossing a finish line, like all the struggle, all the sacrifice, all the pain, it would finally be worth it. But here's what actually happens when you arrive. Nothing. Not nothing in a devastating way. Nothing in a quiet way. The promotion comes and you feel relieved for a day. Then you start thinking about the next one. The goal weight comes and you feel proud for a week. Then you start noticing other flaws. The relationship comes and you feel happy for a month. Then the reality sets in and it's just life. The money comes and you feel secure for a moment. Then you realize it's never enough. And you're left standing there at the place you've been climbing toward your whole life, thinking, is this it? Why arrival feels empty. Here's why arrival feels empty. Because you weren't climbing toward a destination. You were climbing away from a feeling. The feeling of not being enough. You thought that if you could just achieve enough, accomplish enough, become enough, the feeling would go away. But it doesn't. Because the feeling isn't about what you've achieved. It's about what you believe. And no amount of achievement can change a belief. You can have everything you ever wanted and still feel like it's not enough. Because the problem isn't what you have. It's what you believe about yourself. You believe you're not enough. And until you change that belief, no achievement will ever feel like enough. The promotion won't be enough, the body won't be enough, the money won't be enough. Because enough isn't a destination, it's a state of being. And you can't climb your way into a state of being, you can only choose it. Here's what happens the moment you arrive. The goalpost moves. You hit the milestone, and immediately your brain finds the next one. You make 6 figures and start thinking about 7. You get in shape and start thinking about getting in better shape. You find a relationship and start thinking about whether it's the right relationship. The goalpost never stops moving. Not because you're greedy, not because you're never satisfied, but because you've been conditioned to believe that your worth is tied to your progress. That standing still means falling behind, that arriving means stagnating, that being content means giving up. So you keep moving, the goalpost. You keep creating new mountains to climb, new versions of yourself to become, new standards to meet. And in doing that, you rob yourself of the one thing you've been chasing all along, the feeling of being enough. Because you're never allowing yourself to be enough. You're never allowing yourself to arrive. You're never allowing yourself to stop and say, I did it. I'm here. I'm enough. You're always chasing, always climbing, always becoming. And the cost of that is you never get to just be. The trap of more. Let's be honest about the trap you're in. It's the trap of more. More money, more success, more discipline, more progress, more achievement, more. And the trap isn't that you want more. The trap is that you believe more will make you feel complete. That more success will make you feel successful. That more money will make you feel secure. That more progress will make you feel like you've arrived. But it won't, because more is infinite. There's always more. And as long as you're chasing more, you're never arriving. You're never complete. You're never enough. You're just climbing. And the climb becomes your identity, your purpose, your life. You're no longer climbing towards something. You're just climbing because that's what you do. Because you don't know how to stop. Because stopping feels like failing, like giving up, like admitting that the climb didn't lead where you thought it would. But here's the truth. Stopping isn't failing. It's arriving. And arriving doesn't mean you stop growing. It doesn't mean you stop improving. It doesn't mean you stop trying. It just means you stop believing that you're not enough until you reach the next milestone. It means you give yourself permission to be enough right now, as you are, where you are. And that permission is the hardest thing you'll ever give yourself, because it goes against everything you've been taught. The fear of arrival. Here's why you're afraid to arrive. Because arriving means admitting that this is it. That this life, the one you're living right now, is the life. Not the life you're working toward. Not the life you'll have once you achieve more. This life, right now. And if this is it, then what? What if it's not as good as you thought it would be? What if you're not as happy as you thought you'd be? What if you climbed all this way and it still doesn't feel like enough? That's terrifying. Because it means the problem isn't the climb, it's you. It means that maybe the issue isn't that you haven't achieved enough. Maybe the issue is that you don't know how to feel enough. And facing that means facing the belief you've been running from your whole life. The belief that no matter what you do, no matter how much you achieve, no matter how far you climb, you'll never be enough. And that belief is what keeps you climbing, not towards something, away from that truth. But here's what you need to understand. Running from the truth doesn't make it go away. It just makes you tired. And eventually, you'll have to stop running. You'll have to face it. And when you do, you'll realize something. The belief was always a lie. So here's the invitation. Stop climbing toward arrival. Start living in the middle. Stop measuring your worth by how far you've come. Start measuring it by how present you are. Stop chasing the feeling of enough. Start choosing it, right here, right now. Not because you've achieved enough, because you've decided that enough isn't something you achieve, it's something you are. And when you make that decision, everything changes. The climb doesn't stop, but it transforms. It stops being an escape and becomes an expression. It stops being a burden and becomes a choice. It stops being about proving you're enough and becomes about living like you already are. And that's the secret they don't tell you about arrival. There is no arrival. There's only this moment. And you get to decide what you do with it. You can spend it climbing toward a destination that doesn't exist. Or you can spend it living the life you have. The choice has always been yours. There's a version of yourself you've been performing for years. The strong one, the capable one, the one who has it together, the one who doesn't need help, who doesn't show weakness, who doesn't break. You've been performing this version for so long that you can't remember when you started. Maybe it started when someone told you that's what a man is supposed to be. Maybe it started when showing vulnerability got you hurt. Maybe it started when you realized that no one was coming to save you, so you had to save yourself. Whenever it started, it became your default, your armor, your identity. You became the man who proves his worth through strength, through capability, through never needing anything from anyone. And it worked. People respected you. People relied on you. People saw you as strong. But here's what they didn't see: the exhaustion, the loneliness, the weight of constantly performing. The truth that beneath the armor, you're tired. Tired of proving, tired of performing, tired of being strong. And now you're realizing something. The strongest thing you can do is stop trying to prove you're strong. Why we perform. Let's talk about why you started performing in the first place. Because you learned that love is conditional, that respect is earned, that your value is tied to your performance. You learned that people don't love you for who you are. They love you for what you do, for what you provide, for how you make them feel. So you started performing. You became the provider, the protector, the rock, the strong one. You became whatever people needed you to be, because that's how you earned your place. That's how you earned love. That's how you earned the right to exist. And it worked for a while. But performing has a cost. It cost you authenticity, because you can't be real when you're performing. You can only be the role. It cost you connection, because people don't connect with performers. Enesis. They connect with people. It cost you rest, because performances never end. There's always another person to impress, another expectation to meet, another role to play. And eventually, the performance becomes the prison. You're so good at playing the role that you forget it's a role. You start believing it's who you are. And the thought of taking off the mask, of showing people the real you, the tired you, the vulnerable you, is terrifying. Because what if they don't love that version? What if they only love the performance? What if the real you isn't enough? The performance of strength. Let's be specific about the performance you've been doing. The performance of strength. You perform strength by never asking for help, by carrying everything alone, by handling every problem yourself, by making it look easy even when it's killing you. You perform strength by never showing emotion, by staying calm in crisis, by never crying, by never letting anyone see you break. You perform strength by always being capable, by always having the answer, by always knowing what to do, by never admitting you're lost. You perform strength by never needing anything, by being self-sufficient, by being independent, by being the one everyone else leans on. And this performance has served you in some ways. It's kept you safe. It's earned you respect. It's given you a sense of control. But it's also imprisoned you. Because the more you perform strength, the less room you have to be human, to be uncertain, to be vulnerable, to be real. And the less room you have to be human, the less you actually live. You just perform. There's a man in the mirror you've been avoiding. Not the one you see in the morning when you're getting ready. Not the one you've trained yourself to see, the capable one, the strong one, the one who has it together. The other one, the one who shows up in the quiet moments, in the stillness, when the mask comes off and there's no one to perform for. The one who's tired, who's uncertain, who's carrying weight he doesn't talk about. The one who's been trying to tell you something for years, but you keep turning away. Because looking at him, really looking at him, means seeing the truth. The truth about what you've been running from. The truth about what you've been avoiding. The truth about who you actually are beneath all the becoming, all the climbing, all the proving. And that truth is terrifying, because what if you don't like what you see? What if the man in the mirror isn't the man you thought you were? What if he's weaker, more broken, more lost? What if he's not enough? But here's what you need to understand. That man in the mirror, the one you've been avoiding, is the only one who can set you free. Not by changing, by being seen. The man you've been running from. Let's talk about the man you've been running from. He's the version of yourself that doesn't fit the narrative. The narrative that you're strong, that you're in control, that you're fine. He's the version that feels weak, that feels lost, that feels like he's drowning. He's the version that doubts, that fears, that wants to quit. He's the version that needs That hurts. That breaks. And you've spent years trying to outrun him, trying to bury him under achievement, under discipline, under constant forward motion, trying to prove that he doesn't exist, that you're not him, that you've moved past him. But he's still there. He's there in the moments when you're alone and the silence gets too loud. He's there in the moments when you're exhausted and you can't push anymore. He's there in the moments when you look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. He's been there all along, waiting for you to stop running, waiting for you to turn around, waiting for you to see him, not to fix him, just to see him. Why we run? You run from the man in the mirror for the same reason everyone does. Because seeing him means acknowledging him, and acknowledging him means admitting that you're not who you pretend to be, that you're not as strong as you act, not as together as you seem, not as okay as you claim, that beneath the armor you're human, flawed, uncertain, struggling, and admitting that feels like failure, like you've been lying to everyone, like you've been lying to yourself, like the version of yourself you've built, the capable one, the strong one, is a fraud. But here's what you need to understand. The version of yourself you've built isn't a fraud. It's just incomplete. It's the armor, the performance, the part you show the world. But it's not the whole. The whole includes the man in the mirror, the man you've been running from. And you can't be whole if you're rejecting half of yourself. You can only be whole when you stop running, when you turn around, when you see the man in the mirror and say, I see you. And you're not going anywhere. Here's something important about becoming the man who doesn't need to prove anything. Other men are watching, not judging, watching to see if it's possible, if it's safe, if it's allowed. Because they're tired too. Tired of performing, tired of proving, tired of pretending. But they don't know how to stop. They don't know if they're allowed to stop. So they watch you. And when they see you stop performing, when they see you be vulnerable, be honest, be real, and the world doesn't end, they see permission. Permission to stop performing themselves. Permission to be human. Permission to be enough as they are. And that's powerful. Because the performance of masculinity, the version where men have to be strong, capable, unemotional, perfect, is killing us. It's killing us with isolation, with exhaustion, with the inability to connect, to feel, to be real. And the only way to break that cycle is for men to start being honest, to start showing that strength includes vulnerability, that capability includes asking for help, that being a man includes being human. And when you do that, when you become the man who doesn't need to prove anything, you give other men permission to do the same. And that's not weakness. That's leadership. Leading by example. Showing that there's another way. Showing that you can stop performing and still be worthy of respect. Maybe even more so. The daily practice. So what does it look like to live as the man who doesn't need to prove anything? It's a daily practice. Every morning you wake up and remind yourself, I am enough. Not because of what I do, because of who I am. Every interaction, you choose honesty over impression. You say what's true instead of what sounds good. You show who you are instead of who you think you should be. Every challenge, you let yourself be human. You let yourself struggle. You let yourself not know. You let yourself ask for help. Every success, you celebrate without needing it to define you. You enjoy it without needing it to prove you're worthy. You let it be a moment, not a validation. Every failure you accept without shame. You learn without judgment. You grow without self-condemnation. Every relationship you show up as yourself, not the performance, not the role, yourself. And some days you'll forget. Some days you'll slip back into performing. Some days you'll catch yourself proving. And that's okay. Because this isn't about perfection. It's about practice. The practice of being enough. The practice of being real. The practice of being human. And every time you practice, it gets a little easier, a little more natural, a little more true. Until one day, you realize you're not performing anymore. You're just being, and that's when you know you've arrived. Not at the top, at yourself. So here's the invitation. Stop proving. Stop performing. Stop pretending. Stop carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. And start being. Being honest. Being real. Being human. Being the man you are instead of the man you think you should be. And yes, it's scary. Yes, it's vulnerable. Yes, some people won't understand. But the life on the other side, the life where you're free from the performance, free from the proving, free from the constant need to be more than you are, is worth it. It's worth the risk. It's worth the discomfort. It's worth the vulnerability. Because that life is real. And real is what you've been searching for all along. Not perfection, not achievement, not validation. Just the freedom to be yourself and know that's enough. So stop proving. You've already proven everything you need to prove. Now it's time to just be. When you finally stop running and face the man in the mirror, you need to have a conversation, not a judgment, a conversation. You need to ask him, what do you need? Not what do you need to do, not what do you need to achieve, not what do you need to become. What do you need? And then you need to listen, really listen, without defending, without explaining, without fixing. Just listen. And he'll tell you. He'll tell you he needs rest, that he's been carrying weight for too long and he needs to put it down. He'll tell you he needs connection, that he's been alone for too long and he needs to be seen. He'll tell you he needs permission, permission to be human, permission to struggle, permission to not have all the answers. He'll tell you he needs honesty, honest about how hard it's been, honest about how tired he is, honest about how much he's been hiding. He'll tell you he needs acceptance. Acceptance for who he is, not who he thinks he should be. And when he tells you all of this, you have a choice. You can dismiss it. You can tell him to push through. You can tell him to be stronger. Or you can listen. You can honor what he's saying. You can give him what he needs. You can stop making him run. The integration. Here's what happens when you stop running from the man in the mirror. You integrate. You stop splitting yourself into two versions, the one you show the world and the one you hide. You start becoming whole. The strong man and the struggling man, the capable man and the uncertain man, the man who climbs and the man who needs to rest. All of it. All of you. Not one or the other. Both. And integration isn't easy. It means letting people see the parts of you you've been hiding. It means being honest about the struggle, not just the success. It means showing the exhaustion, not just the endurance. It means being whole in front of others, not just in private. And that's terrifying. Because being whole means being vulnerable. And being vulnerable means being seen, really seen, not just the performance, you. But here's what happens when you do it. The people who love the performance might leave, but the people who love you will stay. And the people who stay, the ones who see all of you and choose to remain, those are your people. Those are the relationships worth having, the connections worth building, the love worth receiving. Because they're not loving the performance, they're loving you. And that's what you've been searching for all along. The forgiveness. When you face the man in the mirror, there's something else you need to do. You need to forgive him. Forgive him for not being perfect, for not having all the answers, for not being as strong as he thought he should be. Forgive him for the mistakes, for the failures, for the times he fell short. Forgive him for being human. Because you've been holding those things against him. You've been punishing him. You've been telling him he's not good enough because of them. But he did the best he could, with what he knew, with what he had, with the strength he could muster. He survived. He endured. He made it through. And that deserves forgiveness. That deserves compassion. That deserves grace. So give it to him. Not because he's earned it, because he's human, and humans deserve forgiveness, especially from themselves. The acceptance. Here's the final step in facing the man in the mirror. Acceptance. Not acceptance in the sense of resignation. Acceptance in the sense of acknowledgement. Acknowledging who you are, all of who you are. The strong parts and the weak parts. The successful parts and the struggling parts. The parts you're proud of and the parts you're ashamed of. All of it. And saying, this is me, and I'm okay with that. Not because it's perfect, because it's true. And truth is the foundation of peace. You can't be at peace with a version of yourself that doesn't exist. You can only be at peace with the truth. And the truth is, you're human, you're strong, and you're weak. Chapter 8. Becoming the man who doesn't need to prove anything, continued. Practice asking for help instead of carrying everything alone. You practice admitting you're tired instead of pushing through exhaustion. You practice being honest about how you feel instead of performing how you think you should feel. And at first, it feels wrong. It feels like weakness, like failure, like letting people down. Because you've been performing for so long that authenticity feels foreign. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Being real feels like exposing yourself. But you do it anyway. Not because it's comfortable, because it's true. And every time you choose truth over performance, something shifts. You realize the world doesn't end when you admit you don't know something. You realize people don't abandon you when you ask for help. You realize respect doesn't disappear when you show your humanity. If anything, it deepens. Because people respect authenticity more than perfection. They respect honesty more than performance. They respect humanity more than the mask. And slowly, you start to believe it. You start to believe that you're enough without the performance, that you're worthy without the proving, that you're lovable as the real, imperfect human you. And that belief changes everything. The courage to be ordinary. Here's something they don't tell you about strength. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is be ordinary. Not exceptional, not impressive, not extraordinary, just ordinary. A man who has good days and bad days, who succeeds sometimes and fails sometimes, who knows some things and doesn't know others. A man who's just human. And being ordinary takes courage, because we've been taught that ordinary isn't enough, that we need to be exceptional to be worthy, that we need to stand out to matter. But that's a lie. You don't need to be exceptional to be worthy. You don't need to be impressive to matter. You don't need to be extraordinary to deserve love. You just need to be you, the ordinary, imperfect, human you. And that's enough. Not because you've proven it, because it's true. You were enough before you started proving. You're enough while you're proving, and you'll be enough when you stop proving. Your worth isn't tied to your performance. It never was. It's inherent. It's built in. It's non-negotiable. And realizing that, really believing it, is what frees you from the need to prove. The relationship with yourself. Here's what changes when you stop performing. Your relationship with yourself transforms. Because when you're always performing, you're always judging yourself, always measuring yourself against some external standard, always asking, am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Am I being enough? And the answer is always no. Because the standard keeps moving, the goalpost keeps shifting, the performance is never quite good enough. But when you stop performing, you stop judging. You stop measuring yourself against external standards and start asking different questions. Am I being honest? Am I being real? Am I being true to myself? And those questions have different answers. Not better or worse, just truer. And truth is what builds real self-respect. Not the respect that comes from impressing yourself, the respect that comes from honoring yourself, from listening to yourself, from being honest with yourself, from accepting yourself. And that kind of self-respect is unshakable, because it's not based on performance, it's based on presence. On being here, with yourself, as yourself. And that's something no one can take from you. The freedom of imperfection. Let me tell you about the freedom that comes with embracing imperfection. When you stop trying to be perfect, you stop being afraid of making mistakes. You stop being afraid of looking foolish, of saying the wrong thing, of failing, because failure isn't a threat to your worth anymore. It's just part of being human.